I had to teach her about the men's bathroom etiquette. And so for a while, she would always come in. I would have to try to button her mouth a little bit and say, don't talk, don't say hi, don't be friendly, just do what you got to do. So we had those aspects where were humorous when we look back. And we went on trips together. We do a lot of things together. But being a single dad is tough. I mean, I have such a huge appreciation for moms and what they do. And they're trying to juggle between family, between their work. But not only they have to deal with some of the issues there, but it's the way they nurture the children, the way that perhaps the discipline works. There are times I'm disciplined, but I think I might be disciplined in the wrong way.
My guest today refused to be defined by his circumstances. He has a hearing impairment, so you can just imagine what his school days were like. Then, the love of his life gets diagnosed with a brain tumor, and he is left to raise their little 1-year-old girl. Then there are the job losses. Can you really get laid off on your day off? Yes, you can. So we have a lot to get into today, including his book, Keep Those Feet Moving. So I would like to welcome AJ Coleman to the beautiful side of grief. Lovely to have you, AJ.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Hello, everyone.
So, AJ, I liked to begin our episodes with something that's really special to me. And that's you sharing a wonderful memory that you have of your wife that passed away.
There are many memories that we have together, but one of my favorite memories is when we were on our honeymoon and we traveled the Mediterranean together on a cruise and just really seeing the world, just the two of us, and being lost and going to some of the different countries like Italy, France, Greece. We just had such a marvelous time. And I still remember some of our humorous, renting an ATV in Santorini. And never have I ever used an ATV. So, trying to navigate that and trying to understand Greek, the language, to figure out the rules of the road was comical as well. Because here we are, two people riding on an ATV with no idea where to go and trying to read a map in Greek. But one of our favorite places was just going to Florence, Italy, which is one of my favorite places to visit, with the history and just walking around. And I had gone there many years prior before, but going with my wife at the time was really special because she got to see some of the things that I was passionate about. I did my best to take her shopping there, but she resisted a little bit. But I would say there's just so many wonderful memories. We went to the Chicago White Sox playoff game for baseball. We supported my alumni, the Florida Gators. So many wonderful memories. And these are the memories that I have that I take with me every day. And I smile talking about them because they're truly wonderful.
Oh, yeah, that just warmed my heart. And I think you really get to know somebody, don't you, when you're experiencing things out of your comfort zone that you haven't done before. And like you say, just navigating that ATV in the middle of Greece and like their traffic. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That is, what were you thinking? Really? What were you thinking?
We got word that maybe it was the best way to navigate around and go to the beaches and see a little bit of the winery. And they just thought it was the most economical way to do it, just by renting an ATV. And it was funny. It's just riding around and then having to stop and ask for directions and people looking at us very strange. But we made it to the beach, and it was a wonderful beach, black sand. And we were there for quite some time before it got too hot. And I just got back on the ATV and just started riding around. We did cheat in Santorini by going up the cable car from where the port was up to the top instead of riding a donkey. My wife really didn't have the excitement to sit on a donkey and just kind of gobble up and down, up all the way through. But she was great. Just a real sport at everything. She challenged me to be a better person.
Oh, that sounds beautiful. So, AJ, why don't we get to know a little bit more about you, what your background was like, and that time that led up to the diagnosis with your wife?
Sure. So my wife and I had met online after both of us had had one too many bad dates, and we decided to try to online dating in 2003. And for the first, say, couple weeks, neither of us asked each other out. We were just talking via phone and little emails here and there. I think we were almost petrified to know that we've been on so many bad dates in the past. So we just took our time, but I did take the nerve. And when I first met her coming up, it was October 30th, 2003. As soon as I laid eyes on her, I knew she was the one. And she wasn't quite sure about me at first. That was the old joke around it, the way I guess I was dressed, the way I had my hair. Oh, she was still trying to figure me out, but I knew she was the one. And we were, let's see, we were engaged 8, 9, 10 months later, married 7, 8 months after that, and just really beginning a wonderful life together. And she was growing her career, I was growing mine. We had relocated from Chicago, Illinois, states to the Phoenix, Arizona to work with my family. And Zoe was born in 2008. And what did I know about taking care of a baby? Trying to figure out what the cries mean, how to change the diaper. I mean, we were just two parents just starting out in life. And then, unfortunately, it was an evening on Friday, it was March 7th, where we were hanging up some letters in Zoe's play area, her room, and I was just trying to space out the letters. My wife was trying to tell me where to go with it, and all of a sudden, just couldn't speak. It was very strange, and I had thought that she had just maybe didn't have enough nutrition, tired, being a new mom. And I took her downstairs and I asked her to write a sentence for me. And what she wrote was not even remotely close to what I asked to write.
Wow.
And that's when we realized that, okay, let's get to a hospital. Let's go do some blood workup. Let's just ask. And again, I never thought it was cancer. I never thought it would be significant. And that was the reality. That the doctor came in to the CAT scan and says, you have a large mass. And it was kind of hard stopping. We looked at each other. She cried for a little bit. I cried for a few minutes, but we knew we were going to fight. And I believe we were going to beat it. We really did. I had a fight with doctors, medical science. It was bigger than us all. There was nothing we could have done other than giving her the quality of life, quantity, really give her a storybook.
Yeah, and it's about giving it your best, isn't it? Because I can't even begin to imagine what that time was like for you both. Because, yeah, here you are, just embarking on what you thought were going to be many wonderful years ahead as a family. Zoe was only, what, 2 months old when you got the diagnosis?
Yes.
Gosh, and here you are suddenly having to become a caregiver to not just Zoe, but also your wife as well. And I guess keep working and try and keep all the wheels turning. That must have been an impossible time. Tell us how you managed to get through that time.
I think it was true adrenaline. After the surgery, a few days later, after the diagnosis, my wife came out completely different, like altered from a cognitive standpoint. I'm not really sure she understood what transpired. Where it was sitting on the frontal lobe was quite impactful, and we had to go through some rehabilitation, which means she would be just inpatient care in the rehabilitation for a period of time. And at that time, we had to make a quick decision, or at least I had to make the decision to move back to Chicago where her family resides, because I knew she wanted to be with her family, and I needed the help sense of just trying to balance everything.
Oh,
So at the
yeah, absolutely.
time, I was working 60 hours a week, going back and forth to the hospital, spending hours with her, and trying to raise my daughter, having to rely on different people to watch over, tend well, I can kind of balance. And then at the time, I had to go sell a house and basically pack up everything, and probably there were things that I'm not even sure what we kept, what we did, but it was just straight up adrenaline. I didn't sleep. I was just keep moving. I just kept doing everything that I could think of, just from work to taking care of the bills, arguing with the doctors on what type of treatment they can use, because what I didn't know at the time is obviously we know hospitals, they run a business. But if you go over a dollar amount, it dictates what treatment can be given.
Mm.
And I said to the doctors, I said to the administrative staff, okay, if there's anything that's different in terms of, I'll pay it out of pocket, just bill me. And it was significant, but there's not a day I regret paying out of pocket because of what we were able to do toward the end for my wife was really give her a story ending where she got to see her daughter walk and tell me about it.
Oh,
She lived long enough to see some really good times that we had together. And I'll tell you, she can change a diaper with one hand better than I can change with two. So I still had a lot to learn from her. But it was really the storybook ending that enabled me to help forward in the grief. And the last image my wife saw wasn't me, it was my daughter. And that's where she wanted to go and fall asleep and never woke up. And
mm.
while it's sad, I couldn't have written an ending. Like to see
Oh,
her daughter, the last image, to give her daughter a kiss goodbye, not knowing it would be goodbye. It just brings comfort and helps me take that adrenaline that I was going for all that time and just finally just release
yeah.
the point that I knew I'd done everything I could for her, for myself, for my daughter, for others that are around. But it was definitely all adrenaline. Till this day, I can't remember everything. I remember bits and pieces, right? It was very much a darkness. And I just know overall. But if you ask me what happened on a certain day, I can't remember.
I can't remember. It's I haven't even been through what you've been through. Oh, tell me, AJ, where did that inner strength and resilience? I know you're working on auto a lot of the time, but then there's also a core of inner strength and resilience that you have as well. And I think that comes back from your early years of what you experienced, doesn't it? So would you mind sharing that with us?
Sure. So where my resilience really stems from is my childhood past. I was born at a time where it was unknown with a hearing impairment. And in the 70s, it was not widely really accepted or known how to handle children who have the impairment, how to coach parents and what expectations they may discover later on in life. And like most kids, right, the first couple of years you're bouncing around the place and you're immune to everything. But then once grade school started, I started to realize that I was treated differently because I had an appliance hearing aids that weren't necessarily common.
Oh, they were chunky.
They were the world's largest thing. I thought I was like Dumbo going to
Yeah.
grade school. And again, kids today, at that time, they just, it's all about social. It's all about fitting in and ridiculing different people because they're different. And sometimes they just don't know how to react. And it was a challenge. So from the time I went from grade school into middle school and into high school, it was really a challenging time. I started struggling with who I was, right? I wanted to fit in with the
Yeah.
mainstream, but I was tired of being sort of ridiculed, picked on. I grew up with these people my entire life. They knew who I was, and it was definitely a challenge to find a date for dating because some people just perceive somebody with a hearing impairment as different. Yeah. Over time, I've learned to adapt my own style. I've learned to anticipate things before they happen. I learned to protect myself into more comfortable positions. But at the time, I had never really faced my biggest challenge was accepting that I had a hearing impairment. I wanted to be just like everybody else. And I eventually ditched the hearing aids and then decided I was just going to rely on reading lips, my eyesight, and just navigating uncharted waters. And as I started building up resistance and really started getting more confident in handling some of the challenges that come with it now, I'm in a different type of world from a listening aspect. It's all on me. I have learned to sort of shoulder the blame and accept that I was a little bit a challenge compared to others, but I was still good enough in my job. I was still good enough to be someone that I could find a relationship, a companion with. My wife did not. It took me 2 months to tell her about my disability. She treated it like it was like an old cold. It didn't go off, and again, how I knew she was reaffirmed that she was the one. But that story didn't stop there, right? Just because you get married, I still hid from the fact of my hearing impairment, and as I continued to grow, taking on more responsibility, taking on more initiatives, I just learned that
Was that to try and prove yourself, do you think?
both. Yeah, I was trying to prove myself and to prove others, right? I think a lot of times people perceive people who have needs that they can't do something on their own. So they try to either overcompensate for it. They try to go an extra step that may not necessarily be needed instead of just listening and us tell you what we. And a lot of that also was my own determination to prove to myself that I am smart enough, able to navigate and get an education just like everybody else, and I'm able to live in the world without having additional assistance. And that's my own darkness where I just chose not to address. And then that helped all those challenges, just memories of just getting bullied, having that fear of what people think of me, taking different avenues to protect myself, protect the loved one. I've been through a lot, so when my wife's diagnosis came through, I felt it was on me that I needed to carry this through. And a lot of people expected me to fail as a young single father. People expected when there is grief, people just fall apart and just what I call just go into dark place and just live life very black, shades drawn. I try to counterattack that and say maybe that's what the movies say, but that's not how I. And again, my strength became my dawn to help me pull through. In the moments that I was with her, the moments that we were together, it was all about her. In a private moment, and I can certainly break down. I can certainly have my emotional, but I had to be strong. I had to lead. And I think a lot of people were surprised that I was able to navigate being a widower, being a single dad, and having a career, all these things. And I think my past enabled me to get to where I am today. And having the strength to write the book to really open up about who I was, my past, to enable me to be the type of person I am today. So it's still fresh, but it is out there. It's very therapeutic. And
Yeah. That's a really courageous story. And I think this is just my opinion, but I think that when people go through a lot of adversity, then that does give them a great tool set for coping with really tragic things that happen in life. Because exactly how you described was what people thought of me when I lost my daughter. They just thought that I would not cope. They were really worried, and they were constantly surprised that I wasn't collapsing in a heap. And I think there were several reasons for that. But when you have other people to focus on, when you're concerned about, for me, it was Tal's friends, her teenage friends. Some of them, this was their first experience of death. And I felt really compelled to try and help them navigate this and make it easier for them, the same as you did for your daughter. She was that shining light of hope, and you had to be there for her. So, that's an incredible story, and I think your daughter is so lucky that actually you did have those challenges beforehand. So tell us what that was like, figuring those things out with your daughter. Suddenly your mum and dad rolled into one. How did you figure out how to live this new normal, which I think you liken to running a marathon, don't you?
I do. Life is a marathon, especially when it comes to grief. And the way people always have that perception of how you're supposed to run, how you're supposed to navigate through. And they will all throw all this advice at you. They will tell you how you're supposed to act, when to do things. And I always tell people to run your own marathon races. Where you start is where you finish that marathon, right? And how you get to that point is a whole different avenue. And it's really important when you start out. I recognized that I had limitations as both being a father, mom, and just saying, okay, what do I know? This is a little girl, right? Just she relied on me for everything and anything. And the first thing I actually did was I started to set boundaries. I started to set schedules. I started to put us in a place where we can adhere to a schedule, like nap times, work time, play time, doing all these little things. And I made it very clear that she was the one I was invested in the most. There wasn't anything else that we could do differently. Somebody else couldn't come in if we're at the park. We're engaged with each other, playing, chasing each other around, and really being in those moments. And that was really a key for me, is to really how to handle some of that. I would tell you the cooking aspect was, I till this day, I still don't cook well. I never grasped that. I did have a, what do we call a nanny to come in and help us for the first 2 years with her, getting her to different places and helping us around because I was trying to work a 50, 60-hour week. And I still needed to bring in income. I still had the debt to pay off from the hospitals. So I had a little bit of help. But once we continued to grow together, when she was 3 years old, it was time to go to preschool, and she loved it. And it made things a lot easier. And I would tell you, Zoe is very easygoing. She is more chill than any person I have ever met. I really think that comes from her mother. And I felt guilty, like dropping her off sometimes early at preschool, right? I'm going to go to work and then rush back. And there were times I would try to skip out work a little earlier, surprise her. And she'd be like, Daddy, come back in an hour. I'm still playing with my friends. And you start laughing, right? That's when you know your kid is going to be okay, because they're just having a wonderful time playing with their peers. And as parents, I mean, we're harder on ourselves, feeling guilty with our children. But till this day, Zoe and I are very close. I let her confide with me. There are some things I don't want to hear about. There are some things that I have to listen to. But there are times where we have gotten ourselves into some trouble, especially when she was developing and growing into the young lady she is today. One of my favorite stories is when she started going to the bathrooms with me and started learning how to go She would walk into the men's bathroom and just say, "Hi, guys." And all these men will turn around and look at me, and I got to apologize that, "No, I'm sorry, gentlemen, she's just very social. Just let her be." She was like 4 years old, and teaching her to go on
Yeah,
to the
how
bath.
else do you navigate that if you don't have a mother there or another female to teach them that you have to do that way?
Yes,
Yeah, it's all those things you don't think of.
I had to teach her about the men's bathroom etiquette.
Yeah.
And so for a while, she would always come in, and I would have to try to button her mouth a little bit and say, "Don't talk, don't say hi, don't be friendly, just do what you gotta do." So we had those aspects where were humorous when we look back. And we went on trips together, we do a lot of things together. But being a single dad is tough. I mean, I have such a huge appreciation for moms and what they do. And they're trying to juggle between family, between their work, but not only they have to deal with some of the issues there, but it's the way they nurture the children, the way that perhaps the discipline works. There are times I'm disciplined, but I think I might be disciplined in the wrong way.
Do you mean by that? Come on, spill the beans.
Yeah, I'm always notorious. And one of the key successes that we had is outside of the nap schedule that I was very detailed, as well as going to bed at night at a certain hour. Like we tried to play it flexible. And there were times to be like 6:30, 7:30 at night. I'm like, "Hey, Zoe, let's go get ice cream," you know? And bedtime is like at 9 o'clock, right? And then I wonder why she can't fall asleep because of all the sugar. But little things like that, I'm like trying to make decisions on. It's all about trying to have in the moment and just be the dad and try to compensate for what she is. Sometimes I just let her be, trying to figure things out on her own. It helps her realize that she does have some flexibility, but she has a safety net, other things. But as she's grown into a teenager, we are starting the driving process. And it's been interesting so far.
Gosh, that is an interesting time, and I think you have to take your brave pills for sure. I certainly did with my daughter. She was very strong-willed, and I remember teaching her to drive and going, "Zip it, don't say anything, zip it."
Yep.
Those are times. Look, it sounds like you have done such an incredible job, AJ, with Zoe, and
Thank you.
gee, like, congratulations, because that is huge. To have a beautiful relationship with your child or your children, I don't think anything is better than that, because that's a gift that just keeps on giving year after year when you've done that beautiful foundational work. Tell us also how you navigated those questions from Zoe about her mum. They must have been awkward times sometimes.
I've always tried to be transparent about what happened. And I know sometimes people say you should shy away from using certain terms, words, discussions, but I believe in having that trust, believe in having honest conversations. And even though there are difficult discussions to be had, I think in the long run she would appreciate. So one of the earlier discussions that we would have had is having her understand what happened to her mother. And we used the term mommy. And she's like, "How did mommy?" And I talked to her about mommy having an illness. I didn't say she was
Yeah.
sick. A lot of times people interchange illnesses with sick. But for a young person, sick is when they go to the doctor because they have a cough or they have a fever or maybe a tummy ache. And if they hear that word, it might scare them a little bit. But if
Yeah.
you say illness, mommy had the illness, it's a different word, similar context in a different area, but she's not associating illness with what she has. And it helps starve off that fear. Am I going to die because I'm sick? Not going to die because you're sick. So early on, I made sure I separated the two terms. The other times that I would always encourage her to talk to her mother out loud. Whether she did or she didn't, I don't know. I mean, that's in her private time, but I always made sure that she knew that her mother was around, that her mother loved her. And depending on different faith, different spirituality, sometimes we feel that our loved ones are still with us. We just can't see them. Maybe we can see the signs. And that's important for her to understand that as well. There were times where she would use the mommy card on me and say, Daddy, Mommy says I could just stay up tonight. And I'll say, well, I think Mommy's saying it's time to go to bed. And she's like, well, how do you know? I said, well, we're going to listen for Mommy. What do we have? And there were times where it was just, again, picking and choosing your battles, right? Letting her run her imaginations. I'd sometimes let her stay up for a little bit longer, reading a book with each other or just chatting. But one of the times where she really struggled with as a little girl is she would see her peers with their mothers. And they do their nails, they different types get-togethers where it's just the girls and the moms. Well, I would have to either tag along, which then creates an awkward kind of presence because being a male, or she would go but not have a motherly figure represented. So that was awkward. So at times she just started being out and not being asked to join. And it was hard on her. She really, I think back about my disability and how I felt being a little bit different. I tried to put myself in her place using the same context a little bit, even though it's a different thing, and trying to figure out ways that I could soften that landing. I would take her to get her nails done. I would take her to do, but in the end, it wasn't the same experience, right? I'm the dad sitting in the waiting area, smelling all the fumes while she's just sitting there, not talking to anybody. But it was interesting as a single dad. Yes, we had our moments where they were challenging. I do believe in life that we're putting a purpose, and how we grow and how we go through these challenges is what separates us from others. And that's where legacies are defined. And I think people ask me a lot, what would you do if you didn't have the cancer for your wife? What if she was still around? How many kids would you have? All these what-if scenarios. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what it was like. I can only tell you what I currently know. And I think that's important because people don't realize the beautiful side of grief is that sometimes we don't know what the alternative is, and we work really hard to make the best of what we have.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty amazing.
Gosh, yeah, 100% agree with you there. AJ, let's talk about your book because you just spoke about growing from challenges. And this is where this book has evolved from your personal experiences of what you went through. I love the title for a start. Where did the title Keep Those Feet Moving come from?
So it came back in 2013 when I thought about writing a blog, and a lot of people have asked me at that time, it was about 5 years post when my wife had passed, how do you stay strong? Like, how are you able to go about your life? How are you able to smile? How are you able to get out of bed? And I would have all these different philosophical ways and viewpoints and motivation. Like, you got to put this in writing. And I thought, okay, I can try to do that. What do I know about social media and blogging? But I couldn't think of a name. And I thought about everything. I'm trying to do like a one-word name, like an Amazon type thing, or like an Uber, or Lyft, or some of the other, Microsoft, that would just roll off the tongue. And I struggled with it for like weeks and months. And one day I was just picking up dry cleaning, and ordinarily I would take a right, a stop right, and go home. But there was a train that was running through the neighborhood, and I just didn't want to wait for it. So I decided to take the long way home by taking a left, going all the way around, which is an extra 5 or 6 minutes. And I just muttered to myself to keep those feet moving. And then that's where it hit
Oh,
me. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's it. And that's exactly what I do in my life. I'm just keeping those feet moving forward, no matter what setback I have, no matter what challenge that is presented. As long as I'm moving, I can figure a way around it and figure a way to overcome it. It's when I think people just get stuck and they start standing around. That's where grief really settles in, depression, and they're looking for people to guide them, to get them to start moving again. And that's how it began. It's really just keep those feet moving. And when the book came, there was only one job that I had to do, was keep those feet moving. And we put that on the title. And the picture on the front of the book, it's actually my daughter and I. When many years
mm,
ago, we had a professional take pictures of us, and she was pulling me at one point, and I could not think it was any more fitting because she was the one that helped me grow, helped me
yeah.
grieve, helped me, was really the source of strength. And here she is pulling me as we're walking forward. I think it's just fits all together too well.
I just think it's perfect. And what this book does, when I read it, what I love about it is you give the explanations, you give, a bit of your personal narrative around that, but then you give people tools and the ability to reflect on each of those steps that you take them through. But before we go there, just tell us about the why and the where. We spoke before we went on air about that. So can you please share that with us? Because I think that's really the crux to all of this.
Great, thank you. Many times when we're in grief, we don't understand what kind of phase we are in. And sometimes that recognition, when it's absent, it just makes it more difficult to overcome. And I started thinking of a good way to explain where we are and what stages. And I came up with the idea of the why and where principle. Most people might say the where and how, but the difference between how and where is you're always moving. Keep those feet moving. Where are you going? So in the why, a lot of times this is where we get stuck. And mourning sits in, first happened. Why did this happen? Why me? Why this particular loved one? Why now? You're asking a lot of questions to yourself that really start with why. And the longer you stay in that why am I in this? Why doesn't it feel better? Why don't I feel any more joy? Why do I feel unhappy? If that's where you're really stuck. And over time, if you start migrating to the where principle, thought process, okay, where am I going to go from here? Where am I going physically? Do I stay? Do I go somewhere else? Do I relocate? But when you start asking yourself those where questions, you're showing progress that you're moving forward a little bit. You're
Yeah,
taking little
even if you're
steps.
not, it's that perception of it. Yeah.
If you take enough steps, you start moving toward actual action. And that's where the healing starts. Is you're not looking back and saying why anymore. You're trying to think about where you're going to go and where you can grow as a person and cope to overcome. And there'll be some setbacks. You may fluctuate between both the why and where throughout the mourning process. But it's in the where phase that you can openly talk about your loss. You can openly talk about grief. But the beauty part about the all and the where is you can start looking back and celebrating your loved one. And that's where it's really important because that, to me, is how you're getting to that marathon finish.
See, that's a point that I think a lot of people get stuck in because they're focusing on what has happened and that they haven't got that person with them. And how am I going to move forward? How am I going to live from this point forward without that person? And what you and I are both doing is that we chose to look at that person and celebrate who they are and the time we got to spend with them. So, how does somebody move from that, oh my gosh, this has happened, I can't even think, I can't move, I can't do anything, to being able to go to that, being able to celebrate them?
Yeah, there are resources available that can help others relate to how they feel. There are podcasts just like this. There are podcasts out there that resonate with different stages of grief. There's also professionals that really spend their time in that grief space, helping people recognize maybe what just happened and how they got there. And a lot of these resources are really good at the very beginning, information, but you have to be accepting and say, okay, I know it's hard to read. I know it's hard to listen to it. I don't want to hear it, but you got to push forward because when it's all said and done, everybody goes back to their own lives and you're still in the same grief.
Yeah.
The way you move through it is you start thinking about how are you going to into that weird phase and start pushing yourself. And there are days where it's tough getting out of bed, tough struggling through. But staying in bed doesn't get you anywhere. It's hard. You start looking at teachings, the coaching, the guidance. Friends and family are a great part of those resources.
Mhm.
But it's all on you to push yourself. And thinking about impacts that you have and how do you want to carry the legacy of your loved one. And
Yeah,
that's where you
that's good.
start moving a little bit more forward out of that grief stage because now you're still thinking about your loved one, but you're thinking about them in a positive. That's why people set up foundations. They may do certain dedications of objects or something like that. They may use their names and do other things. I wrote a book. There are different things that enable you to forward. But starting out, it is definitely hard. But you
Yeah.
can't rely on everybody to pull you through. At some point, you've got to start moving yourself.
Yeah, it's got to come from within. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yes.
Yeah, so like you've also experienced through no fault of your own often job losses. And so I want you to share with our listeners some of the key things that will help people if they're facing a job loss, because I know after grief, that can be a very common occurrence where you can't, your life is no longer what you knew it to be. And part of that can be losing the job that you may have had for years and years or however long. Can you share with us how people can get through job loss and how they can look at it from a different perspective?
The beauty about this book, right? I've gone through so much in my own lifetime that grief,
Mm.
even though everybody equates it with loss of a loved one, but it can be a loss of a disability, companionship, and even a job or even faith lost. And anytime you lose a job, it's very similar, right? It's a sudden impact. And you start asking yourself, why? Why did this happen? Why this, going over? And I think it's very easy to get through that. But how you quickly navigate is basically recognizing, in my opinion, that there's something better out there for you. And depending on how spiritual you may be, religious you may be, that sometimes in order for us to get to that next place, something has to happen that's going to push you. Because otherwise we get comfortable. as humans, we're comfortable with the status quo. I like to earn more money. I don't want to have to look for a job because it's just scary or it's time consuming. So what happens? You lose your job. Now you're forced to look for something. And best tips that I could share are the ones that I use personally, and they are in the book, in no particular order. One of the things, I actually wait to apply to jobs that are been posted for a while, maybe 4, 5, 6 weeks, because by that time, they've already gone through the first round of applicants and they're looking for specific skills. And what they find is they're very selective in those first couple weeks of what applicant they want. And they pretty much tell everybody, thanks, but no thanks. We're going to go with these 2 people. And they interview the people. They realize they're not the right fit. And now they got to go back to the drawing board. But they are too embarrassed to go call up the other applicants who they've already rejected and say, hey, you want to come back and interview? So I like to wait about 4 to 5 or 6 weeks after the job is already posted. That's when they start getting a little desperate. They need to fill the seat. The work is not getting done. And on top of that, they may even increase the salary because now they're even more desperate to find something. Maybe they learned through their applicant phase that they're paying too low of a salary, and now they have to increase it to entice more people to apply. The second area that I've always focused on is apply to jobs at nighttime. I know it sounds weird because we're like, well, we have a daytime job. We need to do daytime work. But think about it this way. You spend all your day working to find a job, applying. You're looking outside, the sun's shining, there are things you want to do, places you want to go. Does your phone ever ring during the daytime when you're working and waiting and writing resumes and something? No, and it always rings at the worst possible time when you're out and about, right? So on the flip side, right, shifting that mindset is, hey, I'm busy and I'm getting a phone call that somebody wants to interview. That's actually a good thing. But this way, during the daytime, you can go out, do things. You can go for a walk. You can exercise, meet up with family and friends. Just take some time in for yourself. At night, that's when you apply for the jobs. Nobody's looking at this and saying, okay, this person's applying for jobs at 7 o'clock at night versus this person's applying for a job at 9 a.m. And I think once you start realizing you can start getting things done during the daytime and then spending time at night applying for a job, I think you'll find a little bit more relaxation. And the third aspect of all when you're job searching is, remember, you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you.
Yes,
And this is
yes. So many people forget that part of it, don't they?
And this is where an opportunity what they claim is, well, here's the type of work you're going to do, and here's how you're going to do it. And this is your time that you can just look and interview them backwards and say, this is a place that I feel I can be. Now, one of the areas is the pandemic. It brought a lot of remote workers and having the opportunity to work from home. And depending on your desires, you have a lot more flexibility to achieve that. And I think when you interview, you may meet with somebody and you just might not have a great fit. Instead of settling, it's okay to say, I'm sorry, it's just not working out. And you find something else. Somebody once said, the greater the pain, the closer you are to your goal, right? If you keep getting closer and closer to what you want to achieve, it's going to happen, but it's going to happen and it's going to be much better than you could ever imagine. So those are the 3 areas where I like to coach through the job loss phase. Is something's always better coming around the corner, more money, better hours, better commute. You can always search for a job, but be strategic in where you put your resume after the fact that everybody else has applied. And number 3, go out and do your day. Do the job of searching at nighttime. That way you can take part in the day. It's a lot easier to apply to a bunch of jobs for 2 hours or 3 hours at nighttime versus trying to spend 2 to 3 hours during the daytime, but stretch it over 9 hours.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it just brings a whole entire different energy. If you've been out in the sunshine, enjoying the day, absorbing all that beautiful energy, and then you can bring that to applying for those jobs. And I think that makes a big difference as well. And I'm not going to give it away, but I want people to pick up your book and have a look at what you do with word clouds in relation to the job that's been offered and what your resume says. So, yeah, that was great. I enjoyed so
Oh,
much
thank you.
reading that aspect. I've never thought of it like that before, but yeah, it made loads and loads of sense. AJ, I would love for you just to share with our listeners anything else that we may not have covered that you would really like them to know, what you've learned from your experience, or just what you need them to know.
That's a great question. I think a lot of times people look at grief and they have, again, their own perceptions about how to go about it. You can listen to what they have to say. They can tell you what they feel. But it all goes back to how you want to move through. And there is no timetable. There is no blueprint for overcoming grief. There are some people who have different philosophies on how, again, you're supposed to act, how long you're supposed to mourn for, and whether you should date or not date. And there are some people who thrive in the need of companionship. And some people will go out, start socializing right away and trying to meet the next person. Well, people look at that as a bad quality or a bad sign. That person's not grieving enough. It's actually a healthy sign that they're moving forward. It's not that we forget our loved ones. It's not that we forget that we're in mourning. It's that we are simply living life still. We feel the pain. We're living through it. And the final segment that I would love to leave behind for those who have lost loved ones, who have lost their jobs, lost their faiths, their spirituality, as well as maybe have found disability or loss of companionship. Again, it's really important that you take this in celebration. You may not understand why something has happened, but where you're headed is so much better than where you're currently at today. And celebrate it. Take those wins with you. Celebrate the loss of the loved ones by carrying on their legacy. Take the loss of a job to find a better job to improve your quality of life, better your work-life balance. And if you're searching for a particular companion that didn't work out prior, take this opportunity. There's a better companion out there that's going to give you more joy, more happiness. And life is beautiful. Life is what we make of it. We only have one chance to write our stories.
Oh, that is beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing those insights, AJ. I would like to know now, what is the best thing that has happened to you today?
Wow, there's just so many things that has happened to me today. I mean, from my daughter to just my career. One of the, I would say this, for a long time I had lost my spirituality, and I had traveled overseas to a place that really rediscovered my spirituality and my faith. It changed everything. And this was only a few years ago, so I've already been in grief for 10 years prior plus.
Mhm.
But at the time, it filled a void that I was missing. It was the spirituality where I'm able to take the calmness, able to recognize that things happen for different reasons, that I'm in a place at the right time because that's where I was destined to be. And that's what the life scripts that we have. So my experience over there, it was very spiritual. I haven't mentioned it, due to the war that's going on and the feelings that come
Mm,
with it. But it was Israel. And just
mm.
travel to different parts of the world, some of the architect, seeing some of the wall, and just praying and seeing just how powerful spirituality comes back into the lives, those that have lost it. That was probably something, it's one of the greatest things that have happened since. I would tell you the other thing, again, is continue to watch my daughter grow into the person she is. And looking back, thinking and knowing, have I raised her the way her mother would have wanted her to be raised? And have I done the best I can to be the dad that she? And
I think
I think that's where these are my greatest. Everything else, just materialistic. Writing a book is always. I never thought I would ever write a book after all my English classes, but it was a challenge. But it helped me. And I think now that I think about it, I think the greatest accomplishment out of this whole thing is really recognize that I have a hearing impairment and that it doesn't define who I am. It prepared me for what I am today.
and that's a wonderful, wonderful human being. And I think Zoe's mum would be so proud of the job you've done with her.
Thank you.
I can just tell when you speak about your parenting that she was just this treasured, nurtured girl who's blossoming into this beautiful young lady. Well done, you.
Yeah.
AJ, when you have moments in your day that are not going well, how do you pivot yourself out of them?
First thing I always think about is I know it's not a long term. And there's another element that keeps me going forward. My grandfather coined the term, every day is a good day. And I've adopted that over the years. And anytime anybody would ask him, no matter how difficult that day was, how challenging, he'd always respond the same way. Every day is a good day. And when there are days that are challenging, there are days where just things aren't going right, I think about that. Every day is truly a good day. And again, thinking about how difficult it may be, it's just one step closer for me to reach my goal. There are
Yeah.
certain elements I believe that we just are put in place to pass a simple test. Pass the test, things get easier. Don't pass the test, things remain challenging until the next opportunity presents itself, and then you'll pass it. But I'm blessed for every day. I'm blessed for every opportunity I have. And I get this, the mindset that we have. And once you start adapting that mindset that every day is a good day, it really propels you into looking at that particular day and saying, you know what? Yeah, it didn't go my way, but who cares? Tomorrow's a better day.
Absolutely. What a great mindset that is. AJ, you are doing a wonderful job inspiring those directly or indirectly affected by cancer, or just simply anybody who's facing any personal challenges to get them to keep moving forward and shining so that the light, people can see their beautiful light within. And I want to thank you. Thank you for the wonderful job you are doing and the guidance you are providing from your own personal experiences. Yeah, AJ, just thank you so very much. Would you like to leave our listeners? I'm going to have all the links in the episode notes, but would you like to share finally how our listeners can get hold of you?
Easiest way to get a hold of me is to go through my website, just keepthosefeetmoving.com. You can send a email through there and reach me directly. I do respond to every email that I receive. You can also find other inspirational opportunities on there, some old posts that I have written in a blog setting. You can also find other podcasts that I have done as well. as my book on Amazon. So feel free to reach out to me with questions. If there's something that we've talked about that you want a little bit more insights on, happy to answer any. Thank you for this opportunity to speak today.
AJ, the pleasure's all mine. It's been an absolute joy getting to have this conversation with you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. I hope you got some real value from this episode. If there's a topic you'd like covered, click on the beautifulsideofgrief@gmail.com link, or go into the beautifulsideofgrief.com website, where you can also leave a review. To get notified of new episodes, hit the subscribe button. And if you know of somebody who could benefit from this episode, please share. And until next time, please be kind to you and take good care.